Okay. Good evening, everyone. The Torah is aware of two conflicting emotions that exist when it comes to judging and to judgments. So the Torah tells us specifically, for instance, V'dol lo sehadar b'rivo. A poor person, an underdog. So there's a natural inclination within people to champion the poor person, especially if the other litigant is a wealthy or powerful person. We could call that in the English folklore, the Robin Hood syndrome. Robin Hood was a great outlaw, thief, a murderer, but he was a hero because he stole from the rich and he gave to the poor. And that has a resonance within people. We're all aware that the world is unfair and that good fortune and wealth are not evenly distributed. And somehow we feel that that's unfair. And therefore there's a natural tendency to try and redress that wrong, to make it fair. So how do we make it fair? We take away from someone who has a great deal and we give to someone who does not have. So in the Torah, that's Gezel. You're not allowed to steal from the rich any more than you're allowed to steal from the poor. And you're not here, so to speak, to redress all wrongs by committing another wrong. The Gemara says by David HaMelech, it says that those said Tzedakah Mishpat, that David, when he ruled, was also the head of the Sanhedrin, part of the Sanhedrin. He judged the Jewish people. So the Gemara wants to know, how can you do Tzedakah Mishpat? Tzedakah is mercy, charity. It's not justice. Mishpat is justice. Yikov adin esohar. What's right is right. What is wrong is wrong. Whatever the social consequences may be. So how could you do both? So the Gemara says that David HaMelech judged on the basis of Yikov adin esohar. He rendered justice as it should be done. So therefore, if a wealthy man had a dispute with a poor person, and the halacha, the law, was on the side of the wealthy man, so David HaMelech decided in favor of the wealthy man. But at the same time, after the trial was over, he did tzedakah with the poor person. But the tzedakah did not affect the mishpat. But tzedakah is another area completely. So if we want to help the poor, the disadvantaged, to those who need help, we should do so. It's a mitzvah in the Torah. We're obligated to do so. But we cannot do so at the expense of others. Without making too much of a political comment on situations which exist in our time and have existed for hundreds of years, the government also attempts many times to do something for the poor and the disadvantaged by taking away capital and wealth from the wealthy and those that have, so to speak, to make an even playing field. And even though the idea may be a noble one, and we want to help the disadvantaged classes, but it is unfair to the other side. And that reflects itself in all sorts of situations which exist in current society. Who to give preference to for admission to schools? Do we have the problem here in Eretz Yisrael? How do you get into top flight yeshiva? So if it would be on the basis of merit alone, that would be one thing. But the system is corrupted because of the human element that's involved. So you have the sarcastic comment that if you know the right people, you don't need protection. And that applies across the board. So the Torah recognized that. It recognized that that was the nature of human beings, that there always would be preferential treatment, so to speak. And that we always think the preferential treatment is on the side of the wealthy and the powerful, which is certainly true in most cases. Those who are well connected, those who can afford top-notch legal representation, they certainly have advantage over the ordinary poor person that's subject to the judicial system. But there's a reverse psychology in that too, that the Torah itself makes us aware of. And that's why the Torah said, "V'dol lo sed ar berivo." Don't give preference to the poor man. Because even though in your view of social justice and in your view of how society should operate, we got to help the poor. And the rich man's the rich man anyways. Now, what's going to hurt him? I'll decide that he has to pay 5,000 shekel. He has 5,000 shekel. To the poor man, the 5,000 shekel is an enormous amount. The Torah forbids that because of the fact that that itself becomes a corruption of justice. I don't know what the rule here is in Israel, but in the United States, the rule is that a trial for damages, you're not allowed to make reference to the fact that the defendant has insurance. Because the fact that he has insurance, so that the judge or the jury figures he's not going to pay for it anyway. The insurance company is going to pay for it. Insurance company makes millions of dollars a month, so who cares? And the same thing is true when people sue the government for damages. So again, the government, no shortage of money. So, all right, so we'll give them a big judgment. So there are laws to prevent that. Yeah, they limit the amount that can be won under such circumstances. They limit the fact that the item may not even be known. You can't mention it in order to try and establish some system of fairness. We saw over the last few centuries the attempt to reorder society on a mass scale, which was the idea of socialism, later communism, which is very prevalent today still, to reorder society. How do you reorder? In order to reorder society, one has to take from someone to give to someone else. So again, even though the motives that may be great and powerful and pure, but by so doing, one commits gezel, official gezel, because you're taking property away from someone forcibly in order to help someone else. So that's a very, very touchy subject, fraught with danger. And it lies at the heart of all problems with the judicial system. The Gemara teaches us that when Shammai HaZokein was a member of the Sanhedrin, so this was at the time when Herod the Great was the Roman procurator. And he was accused of, correctly so, of murder. And he was brought up before the Sanhedrin. And the Gemara says, Kovshu kulom pneim bakarka. No one wanted to stand up to Herod. Shammai did, for which he suffered. But the Sanhedrin didn't. And the Meforshim point out that it was one of the reasons that the Sanhedrin canceled itself even 40 years before the Churban happened. But the Gemara gives a reason, given in the Fishe Rotzim. There were many murders. But there are those that learned the Pshat, even in the Fishe Rotzim, there were many murderers, like Herod. And the judges were afraid to take action. And therefore the whole system was corrupted. So rather than have a corrupted system, they felt it's better not to have any system at all. So these are old problems that every society grapples with to the extent that we can. But the Torah makes us aware of it in its ultimate system of justice, that we're trying to prevent such systems to exist, and we're trying to achieve some sort of fairness in the distribution of society. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Omer, Otsa Kodesh Baruch Hu L'Zakos Es Yisrael, Aficha Chir B'Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shenemar, Adonai Chafei Siman Tzidko.